Well, welcome back. We are in our second week of our second topic. This is the Atlantic World Revolts. We spoke a little bit last time in kind of setting up the ideologies, the philosophies that are behind this time frame, the opening of information and sharing of knowledge, the question of who has authority and where does that authority come from? Where does it originate? And today we're going to look at one of the outcomes, one of the fruits of this type of thinking and type of questioning, because there's a lot of people talking about it during this time period. We're going to look at the American Revolution, but I want to start first by reviewing and diving in a little bit more on what those philosophes really said. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So, who are these people? What did they say? Well, we already talked in our last video about Montesquieu and Voltaire. We talked about Locke and Hobbes. We talked about Diderot, and we talked about Rousseau, to name several of them. But what did they actually say? One of them, Montesquieu, you can listen, you read this one and you kind of get an idea of what his goal is, what his focus was at this time. He says, all matter of tyranny emerges when mankind entrusts into one hand the power to make law, enforce law, and sit in judgment. If freedom is to be made secure, let powers be placed in different hands. This, if you can't recognize it, is the separation of powers idea. Instead of the king being the one who makes the laws, kind of enforces the laws and sits as judge against people who might have broken his laws, those various powers should be divided and separated and given to various people. For what reason? So that no one power has all of the authority and can rise above all others. That's Montesquieu, separation of powers. What about Locke? Here's our old boy again. So he says, the sole purpose of government is the protection of our natural rights. And the most important of these rights is the freedom to create governments to serve this purpose. As long as government does this, we must obey it. When government ceases to protect our rights, we change it or overthrow it. So what is this one all about? Well, in part, it says that governments are established by the people, those who are going to live under that government or under that authority. It is not granted by some outside force. It is granted and given and established and designed by the people. For what purpose? Well, Locke says it's to serve the people and protect their rights, protect those natural rights. These are not rights that are granted to people because the government is being so nice. No, these are natural rights already given to the people. The people possess them apart from government. Government's job is just to make sure that nobody interferes or hinders those rights in those individuals. That's Locke's purpose. He also says, and this one's important, he also says that as long as government protects your rights, is doing what it's designed to do, then we must obey it. We as a community, we as a group of people must follow those rules and laws for the benefit of the whole. However, when the government does not do that, when it begins to abuse its authority and fails to do what it is designed to do, its primary function, to protect the rights of people, then the people have the right to abolish it or change it or rise up against it and say, this is not the way it's supposed to go. This one is really super important when it comes to the American Revolution, and we'll see why in just a moment. Diderot, here's another gentleman. He says, no man has received from nature the right to command others. So a natural right that we all have is, one of them is not to sort of like command or have an authority over others. No one has the authority to be in charge or have the power over others. That's not a natural right. That's not a naturally occurring right. He goes on to say, liberty, these rights, liberty is a gift from heaven, and each individual of the same species has the right to enjoy it as soon as he enjoys the use of reason. If nature has established any authority, it is paternal control. That means fatherly control, the male head of the family, so to speak. But paternal control has its limits. And in the state of nature, it would terminate, or it would end, it would stop when the children can take care of themselves. When they can reason themselves, then the father is no longer the main authority over the children. That's what we see in nature. Any other authority comes from another origin than nature. Anybody who wants to say, I have the power, I have the authority, doesn't come from nature, it comes from somewhere else. If one seriously considers this matter, Diderot says, one will always go back to one of these two sources. Either the force and violence of an individual who has seized it, someone who by force has come in and said, you are going to do what I say, and you have no rights, no natural freedoms anymore, no liberties anymore. Or the consent of those who have submitted to it by a contract made or assumed between them and the individual of whom they have bestowed authority. This is, again, part of Rousseau's idea of a social contract. I give someone certain powers over my liberties, over my life. I give them the right to make laws and to enforce those laws and to judge me under those laws. I've given up or granted to that authority some portion of my freedom. He says that's the only way someone can have power or authority over individuals, because they're all born free. That's Diderot. So let's sum this all up. What do the philosophes in general, particularly as the colonists, the British colonists, would see these important principles? One, all men, all mankind, are born free of all human authority. Their natural state is free. Liberties are gifts given to all men, all of mankind, by God. Diderot says, by heaven. We see language in the documentation and the writing in the founding fathers of the United States that they specifically state it is God, or the God of nature. 3, men give up these natural liberties only by choice and their own free will. It's their doing. People may give up some of their liberties to someone or something else with the expectation that the appointed authority will protect the people's remaining liberties and lives. So that's back to that social contract, which is the 5th point here, and that is this agreement between the power or the body that is going to hold authority, whether it be a government or a council or a police officer, whatever that might be, that authority, we grant that and they take care of us. That is a contract. I will do for you, I will give this to you in exchange for you doing this for me. That's called a social contract or civil contract. What else? Moreover, the power given by a people to the authority, whatever authority that might be, should be separated and divided among several bodies. No one authority, one person should have all power, all authority, all control of people's liberties. This is to prevent one authority from holding the power to, 1, make laws. That's legislative. Enforce the laws. That's executive. And be judge over the laws. That's judicial. And if you kind of hear those things, you're kind of going, that sort of sounds like how we have our government set up. Yeah, exactly. We have an executive branch with the president as a head. We have the lawmakers, the legislator, Congress, in 2 different houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And then we have the Supreme Court, the judicial system, the ones that determine whether or not laws are being abided by, enforced correctly, made correctly in accordance with the parameters of the Constitution. Okay, last one. Finally, if the authority breaks the social contract, just like any other contract, if I make a contract with somebody to paint my house and I want it to be blue and with red trim, and the contractor comes and says, well, I don't like blue and red trim, I'm going to do it all gray, and decides to paint it all gray, he has violated my contract. He has violated our agreement. I am no longer obligated to pay him because he has not met the terms of the contract. Same thing here. If the authority breaks the social contract and does not fulfill the expected duties to the people reserve the right to change the appointed authority, government, whomever, or dissolve it entirely and set up an entire new one. That's the groundwork. That's the foundation of what makes America. So, our founding fathers, here's an old sketch that came out of a newspaper from way back when. Benjamin Franklin and all the boys are sitting there and they're looking over their situation. Do they have a proper social contract with Britain? Is the king and Parliament there properly representing them, protecting their liberties? That's their situation. And there's problems that kind of evolve out of this during this time, particularly right after the French and Indian War. And we're going to look into that. About 1663, right around, or 1763. And then out of that, they're going to have to make some choices. What do we do about this? How do we resolve our problems? How do we take opportunities into our own hands? Initially, they tried to go back to England and have a discussion and dialogue with Parliament and with the king. It does not work. They're not listened to. They feel that they have no representation there. So, let's take a look at what you might call the making of America, the making of this new authority, this new government, this new people and nation. So the Declaration of Independence, this comes out of the Declaration of Independence, right? The first part says, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. Please note, this is not the United States. These are United States. They're still individuals. They're each individually joining or uniting together. They're choosing to join in community to go up against this big boy, King George. So, when the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, ha 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 ha, that sounds familiar, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, that should sound familiar. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation. So, bottom line, there comes a time when people don't think that the authority is truly representing, protecting their rights as in a social contract. The British colonies, the people in the British colonies, no longer are feeling that Britain and Parliament, the King and Parliament, are really truly holding up to their end of the contract. We are your colonists, we are citizens of Britain, therefore you should be treating us with those same protections. You should be listening to us, and they are not feeling it. So, the writers of the Declaration of Independence say, rather than just, getting out of this contract, social contract, we feel it is important to declare, to explain why. That's that last part. We're going to give you reasons why we believe England is not doing its job. That authority is not protecting our liberties. The writers go on to say, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That means you don't have to actually go hunt down and figure out and prove it. It's evident to anybody who happens to be walking by and living and breathing. What are the things that are the truths that are self-evident? One, that all men are created equal. That should sound familiar. that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Created by their Creator and endowed or given or granted certain unalienable rights, means they can't be taken away. And these rights are, among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That should sound familiar. This is all taken from Locke and from Rousseau and Montesquieu. This is all part of their dialogue. It's what people have been talking about, not only in the British colonies in the New World, but all over the West, all over the New World, all over the islands in the Caribbean, on plantations. Slaves are starting to talk about this stuff. So, that to secure these rights, now here he goes on, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Who appoints them? They're derived, their just powers, from the consent of the governed, meaning the people are the ones that are giving them, establishing, designing these authorities, these governments, to protect and secure their rights. That's what government is for. Where does government come from? The people, they argue. The people design it. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to establish or institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness, to secure their rights. If the government that they're currently under is not is destructive or is working against, not fulfilling their end of the contract, then the right of the people is to either alter or to abolish it. That is the premise. That is the undergirding of our nation, of the American country. And if you look at this, after the Revolution, after we go through a period where we have the Articles of Confederation, which didn't work out too well, it's sort of like an attempt to make a national government and design it, and it doesn't work too well, we come up with the U.S. Constitution, which is what we are under now. And this is how the U.S. Constitution begins. We, the people, not we, the government, not we, the legislators, not we, the president and the cabinet, but we, the people of the United States. And now it is United States. It is joined. They are now one voice, one nation, in order to form a more perfect union. Not the one that was before, not under the Articles of Confederation, but a better, tighter, more appropriate, more one that serves the rights of the people, protects them better. Establish the following: justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, note, we the people do ordain and establish. It is the people's right to establish and design the authority that they're going to submit to. That's the first part of this one. It's not a very long opening to the Constitution. Everything else in the Constitution deals with all the different various parts of the government. But this is the overarching umbrella under which everything that follows has to align. So one, we the people do ordain and establish. It's their right. What do they establish? They establish justice. They ensure domestic tranquility, the peace within the borders of the nation. They provide for a common defense, whether it be within state to state or between territory and territory. The government is going to be given the right to protect that. Promote the general welfare. That means the general welfare of the nation as a whole. Remember, that was the king's job back in the day. Parliament, they ended up looking more at the liberties that they were personally interested in. But the king's job was the nation, the protection, the safety of the nation and its interaction and place in the world. So this government, our government, was supposed to be given that right as well. to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That goes back to Locke's idea, to Rousseau's idea that this social contract, the government, is to protect the blessings, the goodness, the possibilities that come with our natural liberties, not only to ourselves, but to our daughters, our granddaughters, on and on and on and on and on, to posterity. So those are all parts. So where does this, or how does this appointed authority come about? What does it look like? Well, this is the U.S. Constitution laid out. And if you look at the different color boxes, those are different branches or different parts of authority. There's not an overlap. So all those first blue, that's the legislative branch, the making of the law. That's given to a certain body of government, a certain authority. Their job is to make laws, and to make laws that protect and serve the people. That's the blue. In fact, if you look at it, it makes sense. It's the biggest, most important part of the entire document. Next one, this would be in Article 2. This would be the executive branch. These are the ones that enforce the laws that the first block makes, the legislators make. And then the president and everybody that works for him, their function is to enforce the laws. Think of it like police. They are the police of the Constitution, the police of the laws. The next section, that little purplish kind of box that's not very big, that little small one, that one is the judicial. That primarily sets up the Supreme Court and other courts beneath it, but primarily the Supreme Court. And then the others are state. What rights do states keep, and what rights do people keep? So that's how it's all broken up. It's separation of powers, right? We saw that earlier. So I want you to think about it. The Declaration of Independence, think of it like the frame around a painting, and the painting is the Constitution. The painting must fit within the boundaries, the principles set out within the Constitution. It cannot go beyond it. It cannot expound outside of it. Everything must fit within the principles, the ideas of the Declaration of Independence. That liberties are given by God. These are they're unalienable. You cannot alienate these rights from people. You can't take them away. There is no power that can take them away. No king, no president, no Congress. That all people, all men of all kinds and all backgrounds are created equal. That's going to be a huge problem come time of the Constitution, because now slaves are thinking, well, I'm human. Y'all living like y'all are equal, so that means I'm a man and you're all man. You got equal rights. You're born equal, and you all have rights given by God. That must mean I got all these rights and that I'm equal. And so this tension between how some people, not all, some people were living in the United States at this time and had been for about 100 and some odd years, about the early 1600s, which wasn't that long. There's tension growing here now. We got to do something about this. We actually have to live out what we believe. If we truly believe, we're willing to stand up against England and say, all men are created equal and God's the one that gave us that right, then that has to be applied across the board. You can't divide that. And in fact, this is one of the things that we find popping up in the Constitution later, in that the people who founded this country knew that slavery had to stop at some point. And they wrote into the Constitution the beginning of this process of eliminating or terminating, abolishing slavery by eliminating the ability to export-import slaves inside of the United States after about 1809. That's actually in the Constitution. So, but what about now? Let me get rid of my little marker. What about now? This one I want you to think about. We are just several weeks away from the 2024 presidential election. There's a lot of people that are up in arms and going crazy. There's lots of state propositions that are asking you, who will soon be voters, to make some choices. And one of the things I'd like you to do is think about anytime you are going to vote or thinking about where you should vote, where you should back up, understand that part of your vote, at least part, perhaps even a big part, is going back to that social contract. You are voluntarily giving up some liberty to some authority for some bounce back, some contract. So if you look at a proposition and the proposition asks you to pay more taxes to do X, Y, Z, okay? Ask yourself, what am I giving up? What liberties am I giving to someone else to control? That's a good one, a good question to think about. One of the ones, and the reason why I bring this up is because this morning I was looking through my social media and one popped up. There was an article that popped up focused on a pretty well-known senator, current senator, who is accused. I haven't looked to make sure I got everything exactly right. I'm just going by what the article said. But the communication, the rumor, whatever the reporter is giving out, stated that he believes that the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, which is part of our Constitution, is dangerous. It is the greatest hindrance to the fixing, I should say, or the eliminating of disinformation. And by disinformation, the term just means wrong information or incorrect information, false information. And so the article says that his answer to this, his solution, is to get rid of the First Amendment, to take out the First Amendment. So I wanted you to, I don't want to take a moment because it's part of our discussion on liberties and giving up liberties. Let's look at the First Amendment. The First Amendment is here. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. 1. Or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That's 2. Or the right of the people, peaceably to assemble. That's 3. Or to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, all of this, mostly, for the last parts of it, really come, like the petition the government for a redress of government, that was the Declaration of Independence. The whole thing was a list of grievances saying, King, you're not doing your part. You need to fix this. And because you haven't, we're going to kick you out. The right to peaceably assemble. Peaceably assemble. It doesn't mean you can assemble and destroy everything in your assembly. That's not what that says. You don't have that right because that infringes on other people's liberties. But you do have the right to peacefully gather together and assemble to have discussion and dialogue or to make some sort of argument. To abridge, meaning you're going to cut, censor, twist, forbid, do something to hinder the freedom of speech and the dispersion of information through the press. Now you might include social media in that same thing. Can you censor social media? Or must it, like the press, like freedom, people's personal freedom choices, is there a way to censor or stop particular information? Now, if he had his way, he would actually go over and eliminate this. He would get rid of this particular amendment. He would just take it out. We would have another amendment that says the First Amendment is now abolished. So my question to you is this a liberty, these liberties, are you willing to give these liberties to an authority, to our legislative branch of government, to pass laws to eradicate or remove this from our Constitution? Are you willing to do that? If not, then why would you back it? Why would you vote for it? Why would you not scream bloody murder that this is a wrong thing to do? Don't you dare take away my liberties. As Patrick Henry famously said, give me liberty or give me death. So that's kind of the uproar during the American Revolution. And it's still going on. We are still seeing today that these ideas, these philosophies are not something that's old, that's back then. It's now. It's happening and affecting your very lives. So think about it. Am I willing to give up my liberties in this way, the way I'm being asked to vote, to agree upon? Am I willing to do that? And if not, make an appropriate decision. So next up, we're going to look at the revolution itself and go from there. And then that will be the last of this week's series. See you soon.